President Obama is calling on the Senate to follow the lead of the House and pass the climate change bill. The legislation will reduce industrial emissions by 83% by 2050, but critics are calling it a job killer, biggest in the history of Congress, according to some Republicans. Joining us now is Carol Browner, assistant to President Obama for energy and climate change. And everybody says czar. I mean, can I just call you czar, Ms. Browner, or should we just stick with, I mean, it's easier.
I think Carol works best.
Boy, it was tough to get it. 1 out of 5, even 1 out of 5 Democrats didn't go with it. What's the Senate looking like?
Well, the Senate leader has said he wants to move a bill. You've got committee chairmen starting to do their work. Look, historic change is tough. People said 6 weeks ago there was no way this bill would pass in the House, comprehensive energy reform. It happened. We're going to work with the Senate and do what's possible.
Even the president, front page of the New York Times today, the president doesn't like the trade sanctions that are in this bill. So, and I think there's a lot of people, Ms. Browner, on the left that think it doesn't go nearly far enough.
Well, you know, the legislative process is always about figuring out what you can do. This bill is a good bill. It creates the opportunities for us to chart a path of clean energy jobs. Whether it be weatherization, wind farms, solar farms, and it helps to position the United States in the global clean energy market. We can be a leader, and that means jobs for communities and families across this country.
Do you think that I know you heard the chants of BTU, hearkening back to 1993 and what happened. Are you absolutely certain that this isn't going to take a similar path where some of the individuals that went with the president after a lot of coercion could have trouble in their own local districts and maybe it never does go through the Senate?
The Senate, again, is telling us they want to move a bill. We want the Senate to move a bill. We're going to work with the Senate to do this. You know, this needs to be about the future. You know, people talking about things that were 16 years old, they're not looking to the future. We want to look to the future. The president has said repeatedly that comprehensive energy reform is good for the country. It will allow us to create clean energy jobs, to compete in a global market. That's where we're headed on this. This is about helping chart a different future for our country.
You know, Carol, when you talk about the U.S. being a leader on that green path, how important is it that rapidly industrializing nations and big emerging economies like China and India over in Asia take that path as well, follow the U.S.'s lead, because otherwise you can kind of see a situation whereby it's great that the U.S. is making the effort, but some of these other countries aren't, and it might even put the U.S. at an economic disadvantage.
Well, creating jobs, creating lots of new jobs in the clean energy sector will position us in the global market. We don't want China to lead that. We want to be leading that. We want to be at the forefront of this revolution of clean energy jobs. It's starting to happen. The stimulus was a good start. We're starting to see jobs in communities across the country. These are good domestic American jobs. This bill will give our business community, many of whom supported this, the kind of predictability and certainty they need to start to make large-scale investments so that we can have the new technology, so that we can lead the world in clean energy.
Carol, are there areas in which the House went too far? It's been reported the president was critical of some elements like trade barriers with countries that don't meet this sort of global standard we're setting for ourselves.
You know, whenever you're working in the legislative process, as you all know, different points of views have to be reflected in the bill. This is the first step in the process, the Senate, then there'll be a conference.
Right.
You know, there are opportunities to continue to shape this.
Right,
I think
specifically,
the president has a framework for what he asked Congress to do. And I think that in large measure, this bill meets that framework. What he said is give us a renewable electricity standard so we can create the demand for wind, we can create the demand for solar.
Understood.
Make the investment in technologies, huge investments in this bill, and put a cap on dangerous pollution so that we can start doing the job of reducing that pollution.
He did not ask, though, for penalties when it comes to international trade. And I wonder specifically on that, do you hope to walk that back?
What we believe is that we have to protect our trade-sensitive industries. Absolutely. There are other provisions in the bill that also seek to do that. We'll work with the Senate to find the best way to do it. Those industries absolutely have to be protected, and the president wants them protected.
Isn't it strange, though, that there isn't more to help railroads versus the highways? It's my understanding that shipping a ton of freight by rail only uses about a quarter as much fuel as it does to put it on a truck over the highway. And you wonder if that wouldn't be a very simple and easy way to cut down on the 33% of the pollution that comes from transportation.
The bill does have a number of measures for transportation. We're also leading the way here in the administration. Earlier this year, the president announced the first ever proposed greenhouse gas standards, fuel efficiency standards for cars, 35.5 miles per gallon in 2016. When that program is fully implemented, we will save 1.8 billion barrels of oil. We're leading the way in breaking our dependence on foreign oil. This bill gives us some additional tools to continue that progress.
Right, but the Cash for Clunkers program is much more lenient on truckers than it is on autos in the sense of how much mileage improvement there has to be to qualify for the $4,500. That seemed oddly inconsistent.
Well, the Cash for Clunkers is a very important program for our automotive industry. It's about what we can do today to get sales moving again. The proposed standards that the president announced are about making sure as we go forward over the next several years that every single type of vehicle, whether it be a truck, a minivan, or a car, is cleaner than it was before. Every single vehicle will have to improve its fuel efficiency. So we're preserving consumer choice, but we're also saving consumers money, because when you fill up at that gas station, that gallon of gas is going to go further than it went before.
The big piece last week in the Journal. I just wonder what you make of it, Ms. Brown. I think it was called the climate change, and I think maybe I don't know whether I have a quote from that, but the number of skeptics, far from shrinking, is swelling. The collapse of the consensus has been driven by reality. The inconvenient truth is that the Earth's temperatures have flatlined since 2001, despite growing concentrations of CO2. What I keep reading is that the debate is over, and yet I keep hearing a debate. So I don't know how, people that would like it to be over say it's over, but I hear the debate, so it's not over about the science.
Well, there are always going to be those people out there that say, can't do it, no way, no when. The scientists have been very, very clear, and, we've got more science on this issue than we've had on any other important environmental pollution issue in the history of this country. What this bill is about is looking at how we solve that problem, but we create opportunities for American communities, for American families, how we participate in the global clean energy economy. We can be a part of it. We can lead it. We need to lead it. This bill helps us chart that course forward.
Wind and solar could be obviously something that might add in maybe 2020, 2030. What do we do in the meantime, Carol? Do we do nuclear? Do we do coal? Hydrocarbons have to be part of the mix, don't they?
Well, in the short term, we can do a number of things, and we're already doing them. The Recovery Act, we secured loan guarantees for wind farms, for solar farms. Those are starting to roll out. Similarly, sequestering the carbon associated with coal, demonstration projects, that money is starting to roll out. We're very, very active already. This legislation will give us the rest of the tools we need to secure those clean energy jobs.
Have we calculated at all how much electricity would be needed if the world really began to use a lot of electric cars, say 10 million or something on the road, and where that electricity would come from?
Well, as we transition away from the cars of today, two things will happen. One is they'll become more efficient. The president's already driving his administration in that direction. The second is we will see alternative technologies, the battery technology. We're making large investments in battery technologies. Last week, Dr. Chu at the Department of Energy announced a number of grants for battery technology. But at the same time, we have to start bringing on the renewables. We have to start bringing on the clean energy. And with all of those investments will come great new domestic jobs for American communities and families.
Carol, the reports over the weekend about the number of pages in this bill and how many were written in a hurry. Have you read every page?
My staff and I have been watching this bill from the very, very beginning. We are very familiar with all aspects of this bill. The legislative process. The legislative process is what it is. There are amendments at the end. That is no surprise to any member of Congress.
Yeah. That's like reading War and Peace.
Yes.
I think we're talking 1,300. I'm not sure, but it's a lot. It's a lot.
It's more interesting than War and Peace, actually.
Do you think the president is going to have to call? There's not as many people to call, obviously, but is it going to be just as hard in the Senate?
You know, change is always hard. This is historic change. This is about charting a future for our country. I suspect there will be lots of robust debate. We will engage as appropriate. But, you know, 6 weeks ago, people said we couldn't pull this off in the House, and we did. And that's a tribute to the president's leadership and his vision for the future of this country.
You have turned some heads. I think just about anybody on either side would agree with that. Carol, we appreciate your time today. We'll be watching closely. Carol Browner, of course, joining us from the North Lawn.